critical mass, critical yeast. And then I like to think about the butterfly effect. So this is real popular. We have the movie The Butterfly Effect, which I haven't seen, but I heard didn't do a very good job of talking about the issue or how the mechanisms of how the butterfly effect works. But the butterfly effect is, if we think about it in terms of the metaphor, a small butterfly flaps its wings in China. The influence, the change in trajectory of the air, therefore, let's say, links up with effects and airflow that's moving and alters it slightly. That therefore means that flow of air, let's say, hits a low pressure system where it may have just missed it before. That low pressure system then can pick up momentum and water vapor and so on and so forth across a global scale. So when a butterfly flaps its wings in China, it's possible that it can, through a series of effects, then create, let's say, a hurricane off the east coast of the United States. So there's a couple pieces that are helpful to understand, and this is really exciting stuff, I think, in terms of how the butterfly effect works. One, it requires an understanding that systems are open. So if we had a balloon and we had the butterfly inside of it, no butterfly effect, right? Just butterfly flapping its wings. But there are no systems, well, maybe there are, but I'm not aware of systems that are like that, completely closed. There's porosity, porousness, and channels for flow across everything, across all human systems. So then it becomes possible that because systems are vulnerable to change, now they may be very resilient. The butterfly may flap its wings 1 billion times. It's a whole combination of factors that on that occasion where that butterfly flaps its wings, that airflow, the initial stream of air, is vulnerable in that way that sets off this series of changes. It takes a lot of kind of, you could say, magic, or what do you want to say, coincidence, or an alignment of various, of a lot of variables to make it possible. But this is the world we live in. So one, that a system is open. That's a prerequisite of a butterfly effect being possible. Also, that systems are non-linear. It's not like dominoes. They're complex and so many different things are going on. So if you can affect one thing slightly, it's impossible to even predict the set of consequences that is going to affect. And this is the world that we live in. So for example, I had a butterfly effect experience when I was 15. I met some folks that were doing interfaith work and peace work, and I grew up in a small town in the U.S. And they were from Japan, and I had never met anybody who was a peace worker, which is one of the names that I call myself. Peace worker. I do conflict resolution and nonviolence work. So at 15, in my box of what was possible, athlete, whatever, barber, potentially college student who knows what I was thinking at that time. It's hard for me to remember. But that seemed strange and different. And now later I went on to have all these other experiences, and that became a big part of my vocation and work in life. I went back to Japan about 15 years later, and I found that person who had influenced me by just expressing what he did for his life's work. And I said, hey, I was 15, you were in my uncle's pizza place, and you told me that you did peace work, and I was real inquisitive, but I didn't know what the heck it was, and that really affected me, and now I do this. And he didn't remember. He remembered that my uncle used to give him free pizzas with everything on it. But he may have vaguely remembered some kid that was interested and came up to him, but he didn't particularly remember the interaction. Now, that has affected me, my relationships, the work that I do, the fact that I'm talking right now on this video following up this conversation that we've had, and that this will have whatever effect it has out in the world. And that's a kind of example for the butterfly effect. So the butterfly effect, I'm interested to hear what people who are listening to this think and their own stories about the butterfly effect. It's not something that you can really engineer, but it is a reminder that that there is a sort of, a world of possibility, a politics of possibility, a way of living of possibility that is beyond our ability to predict and control. And so that, for me, can be a source of hope sometimes, because things sometimes feel really heavy and move slow. So does that mean that we give up strategic action? No way. Does that mean that we don't try to understand results and evaluate what we're doing and do what we're doing better? No. But it also means that we might experiment in a little bit more creative and dynamic kind of way, because of the nature of this world that we live in. And I think that's something that's a marker of our time. You know, the times before us was about an idea of science which had a real hold on this idea of predictability and replicability. And now people understand, and global climate change is a great example of this, our ability to intervene in these complex systems and affect change is not so simple. We might try to plant trees to offset carbon of airplanes, but it's not they don't just suck up the carbon and make everything better. And then those trees themselves will produce some methane gases or whatever the situation may be. So it's a very complex system. And the butterfly effect sort of reminds us that while we may not be able to always see the immediate effects of our action, they can have a small change in one part of the system can be altered, slightly changed, and because systems are vulnerable, find itself somewhere down the road affecting a much larger change, which we may or may not know about. We may be having a conversation, you know, walking down the street, somebody's grandmother may have just passed, and they're questioning life, and they catch a tidbit of what we're doing and decide that they want to do something different with their life and get on a bus and go to Florida and create a non-for-profit and down the road. So oftentimes in terms of talking about strategy for social change, I like to think about this critical mass, critical yeast, and the butterfly effect. Three very different kind of pathways, but all presenting exciting and dynamic possibilities. And I think we're going to see people using these ideas, whether they're named or not. And we are seeing people who are contributing to these kinds of changes. And I think that, you know, the advantage of us having these kinds of discussions is that we can be more strategic in trying to make these things real and building on the fact that this is all already going on.